The 10 deadliest tractors ever built. Across decades of agricultural innovation, one machine defied every known limit of power, size, and control. It wasn't the fastest nor the newest, but when it moved, entire fields trembled. Those who drove it learned, often too late, why it could never be built again. Welcome back to Tractor World, the journey that uncovers what most have forgotten about the machines that shaped modern farming and engineering. In this episode, we count down the 10 deadliest tractors ever built, each one a mechanical milestone that pushed beyond safety, reason, and sometimes the land itself. Stay until the end, because the tractor ranked number 1 will redefine how you see power forever, and missing it might mean misunderstanding the very idea of strength. If this is your first time here, hit like and subscribe to join us on the following chapters of this series, where we reveal the machines that changed not just agriculture, but the limits of human engineering itself. Ranked 10th, Fendt 1167 Vario MT, 2023, 673 horsepower. Too strong for its soil. In 2023, Fendt unveiled a machine that blurred the boundary between farming and industry. The 1167 Vario MT is not a tractor in the traditional sense. It is a 19-ton, 673 horsepower track colossus powered by a 16.2-liter MAN inline-six engine. Its continuously variable Vario drive transmission feeds both tracks with seamless torque. At the same time, twin hydraulic circuits deliver up to 440 liters per minute, enough to drive the largest air drills or tillage systems ever attached to a farm vehicle. Developed at Fendt's AGCO plant in Jackson, Minnesota, the model represents 3 decades of German-American collaboration on high-horsepower track technology. The first production units appeared in 2021, targeting operations too vast for wheeled tractors to handle. Grain farms spanning thousands of acres across the U.S. Midwest, the Canadian prairies, and Brazil's Cerrado. In the Nebraska field tests, dynamometers recorded nearly 600 horsepower at the PTO, confirming that the design had surpassed every known production benchmark for its class. Yet this leap in strength introduced a new problem. Each pass pressed nearly 19,000 kilograms across a 2.99-meter wheelbase. Even with tracks, soil compaction rose to levels that could cripple future yields. The operator's margin for error shrank to inches. One misangled slope or soft patch could turn the machine's mass against itself. Transport became a logistical equation of its own. Field entrances widened, roads reinforced, trailers re-engineered. Today, listings for the 1167 Vario MT exceed US $800,000, with lightly used units still fetching over $440,000. It remains one of the most advanced production tractors on Earth. Yet it stands as a symbol of how easily progress can overtake practicality. No public record ties the 1167 to a fatal crash, but the potential is always present. The balance between traction and destruction is measured in millimeters. That paradox earns it a place in this countdown. The story of the Fendt 1167. Vario MT begins with a vision of limitless power. It ends where it started, on the assembly floor in Minnesota, waiting for the next engineer to decide whether more is still worth pursuing. Ranked 9th, John Deere 8020, failure by design. In 1960, John Deere attempted what no other manufacturer had done, to build a four-wheel drive tractor entirely from its own factory line. The result was the Model 8020, a 10-ton machine driven by a Detroit diesel 671 two-stroke engine, producing 215 horsepower. The design was ambitious: permanent four-wheel drive, twin hydraulic steering, and a length of more than 6 meters. In the shop manuals, engineers called it the power experiment. In the fields, it proved exactly that. Early trials on the Great Plains showed enormous traction, but within weeks, driveline fractures appeared. The rigid frame, lacking articulation, transferred torsional stress directly into the gearbox. Operators reported violent jolts when the front and rear axles met uneven ground. One Nebraska test in 1961 recorded complete transmission failure after 180 hours of operation. Replacement parts took months and cost nearly a third of the tractor's value. What was meant to revolutionize large-scale tillage instead exposed the mechanical limits of an untested concept. A handful of 8020 models were sold to contractors who valued brute strength more than longevity. Others were quietly recalled. Farmers who used them described the same problem: enormous torque, uncontrollable momentum, and steering so slow that by the time you reacted, the machine had already shifted the earth beneath it. John Deere canceled production in 1961 after barely 100 units, later developing the articulated 7020 series to correct the design. The 8020 remained a ghost entry in corporate memory, a tractor that marked the company's first and last use of a two-stroke Detroit diesel. Today, only a few survive in museums, their green paint dull and rivets cracked by time. They are cataloged under special prototype, limited release. No fanfare, no brochures, just a line in the archive. Model 8020, discontinued 1961. That's where the story ends, as a record in the file cabinet of agricultural history, sealed not by tragedy, but by data. Ranked 8th, Fiat 18090, 1984, 180 horsepower. Power with no brakes. The Fiat 180-90 arrived in 1984 as Italy's answer to the growing arms race in horsepower. Under its bright orange hood lay an 8.1-liter Fiat Iveco turbo diesel pushing 180 horsepower through a 16-speed gearbox and a rigid four-wheel drive chassis. On paper, it was flawless, robust, durable, a statement of national engineering pride. In the hills of Tuscany and the Alps, it became something else. The weight that gave it traction on flat ground turned against it on slopes. Its center of gravity was high, and its brakes were narrow and inefficient for the loads it pulled. Operators learned quickly that a 180-90 on a wet incline was less a tractor and more a gliding mass of steel. In the 1980s, rural Italy saw a wave of modernization. Farmers traded small tractors for bigger machines, chasing productivity and status. The Fiat 180-90 became the symbol of that moment. Loud, imposing, painted in Fiat's signature burnt orange. Dealers called it the king of the hill. In practice, it was often the one that rolled down the hill. The hydraulic brakes overheated on long descents, and a single mishandled gear change could lock the rear axle, sending the machine sideways. Local authorities issued advisories after a series of fatal accidents in northern Italy in 1987 and 1988, calling for mandatory dual brake systems on high-power tractors. Still, the 180-90 remained beloved. Its engine note, the sharp whistle of a single turbocharger spinning through dust, became a soundtrack of European harvests. Today, collectors across Europe restore them for shows. Some still work the fields of Morocco and Spain. Each restored unit carries the same warning plate: 7,000 kilograms dry weight, 180 horsepower, use with caution on slopes. It's the closest thing to a confession a tractor can make. Ranked 7th. Case IH Steiger 620, 2014, 682 horsepower, when power needed permission. It was built to be the summit of mechanical agriculture. 682 horsepower, four-wheel drive, a body of welded steel heavier than most battle tanks. The Case IH Steiger 620 emerged in 2014 as the largest and most powerful production tractor on Earth. It's the FPT Cursor 16 engine turned at 1,800 revolutions per minute, delivering nearly 3,000 Newton-meters of torque through the PowerDrive 16x2 gearbox. Each tire stood taller than a man. Fuel capacity, 1,800 liters. Operating weight, 27 tons. It wasn't built for the farm as much as it was built for scale. On open plains of Saskatchewan and North Dakota, it could pull 40-foot air seeders or 12-shank rippers without pause. But behind that strength came heat. During internal overload tests in 2015, hydraulic lines ruptured at 5,100 pounds per square inch, igniting oil along the manifold. Case IH engineers traced the issue to thermal feedback between the turbo intercooler and pressure sensors. The system responded milliseconds too late. Production resumed with updated shielding, but the lesson remained. When power expands faster than control, even steel bends. In the real world, Steiger 620 IH worked 12-hour shifts, covering over 1,000 acres a day. Operators describe fatigue as the actual hazard. The strain of commanding a machine that never idles. The cab hums at 82 decibels, the twin turbos scream under load, and every movement of the steering wheel carries thousands of pounds of momentum. For all its precision, GPS and auto guidance, one miscalibrated hydraulic valve can still undo the whole chain. Today, the 620 remains an icon of modern farming, not for its danger, but for how close it rides to it. Engineers call it controlled excess, a point where design, ambition, and physics meet at the edge of reliability. The irony is simple. A machine created to master nature became a reminder that nature still writes the rules. Ranked 6th, Massey Ferguson 1150, 1969, 146 horsepower, a lesson in torque. When Massey Ferguson released the 1150 in 1969, it looked like a promise. A compact frame, modern styling, and a Perkins A8.5 10V8 diesel under the hood. 8 cylinders, 8.4 liters of displacement, 146 horsepower at 2,200 RPM, more power than any Massey tractor before it. Farmers called it the red muscle machine, but power alone can distort steel. The 1150's transmission was a 12x4 multi-power unit borrowed from the smaller MF 1100. It was never meant to absorb the violent torque of a V8. Under heavy load, torsion ran through the center housing, twisting it like a beam. Operators reported gear levers shaking, clutch pedals stiffening, and frames bending after hundreds of hours. The phenomenon earned a name in mechanic circles: torque twist. Inside workshops from Kansas to Yorkshire, technicians tried to reinforce the chassis with steel plates. Some machines worked for years, others broke after a season. The same engine that gave it a roaring soundtrack also delivered forces that its transmission couldn't channel. For Massey Ferguson, the lesson was painfully clear. Adding power is easy, distributing it safely is not. By 1972, the company released the 1155. Same V8, heavier frame, new mounts. The 1150 quietly disappeared from catalogs, its service bulletins archived under field failures. Collectors still admire its raw sound, that deep, uneven rumble of a diesel V8 straining against metal. But for engineers, the memory is different. It marks the moment when power outpaced structure. Ranked 5th, Belarus DT-75, the machine that outlived its makers. In 1962, on the banks of the Volga, the Soviet Union built a machine meant to outlast war, frost, and time itself. It was called the Belarus DT-75, a crawler tractor of iron simplicity and brute endurance. Its heart was an A41 diesel engine producing around 170 horsepower, fed by a mechanical pump and cooled by nothing but air and trust. Weighing almost 7 tons, it moved slowly, 11 kilometers an hour at best. But it moved everywhere. Across Siberia and Kazakhstan, the DT-75 became the face of Soviet agriculture. It graded roads, pulled timber, towed artillery, and plowed fields frozen hard as stone. But with diesel lines exposed to -40 temperatures, mechanics improvised, heating fuel lines with open flame, pouring gasoline into priming carburetors. More than once, the tractor ignited while still idling. In Soviet records, such incidents were filed under operator error. In practice, they were the cost of working with metal on the edge of physics. Production never stopped. Factories in Volgograd and Pavlodar kept building the DT-75 for nearly half a century. It was cheap, repairable with a hammer, and powered by engines that could run on diesel, kerosene, or sometimes any liquid that burned. No two tractors were identical. Each carried its own pattern of dents, welds, and soot. Today, thousands still crawl through the plains of Central Asia, their red paint bleached to orange by decades of sun. Some work for farmers, others for construction crews, a few for armies that no longer exist. The air is thick with the same sound as 1962, a deep, uneven diesel knock echoing across the steppe. Ranked 4th, Big Bud 747. When power became burden, today it rests inside a museum hangar in Montana, silent, cleaned, and surrounded by visitors holding phones. When the key turns, the entire building trembles. 16 cylinders ignite in sequence, exhaling a cloud of diesel that smells like another century. This is Big Bud's 16 Bomb 747, the most powerful tractor ever built by human hands. In 1977, Ron Harmon and the Rossi brothers designed it not from a factory blueprint, but from a question. How big can a farm machine get before the land itself gives up? The answer came in steel, a Detroit diesel 16 var 92T engine, 24 liters, 1,100 horsepower, 8 tires taller than a man, each carrying more than 5,000 pounds. The transmission, a Fuller 18-speed meant for mining trucks, connected the two axles through custom shafts the size of a human arm. On open ground, it could pull an 80-foot cultivator faster than most tractors could idle. Yet strength created its own failure. After several seasons, agronomists noticed the soil compacted into hardpan layers that no root could penetrate. The same power that promised efficiency began killing the ground it worked. Field ruts deepened, hydraulic seals burst under vibration, and fuel consumption reached 160 liters per hour. Big Bud wasn't unsafe to people. It was dangerous to the earth. By 1991, Rossi Farms retired the machine. For years, it sat rusting in a shed, its white paint turning gray. When restored in 2020, engineers discovered the pistons still flawless, proof that the design itself had never failed, only its purpose. Ranked third, John Deere 9, ERX 830, the point of no error. On the edge of a Kansas field, 4 tracks meet soil with surgical accuracy. Each one moves independently, controlled by sensors measuring pressure, angle, and temperature 100 times per second. This is the John Deere 9 RX 830, the most powerful tractor the company has ever built, and the most precise. Inside the cab, the new JD18X engine hums at 1,900 revolutions per minute. 18 liters of displacement, 6 cylinders, no DEF, 830 horsepower. Fuel atomizes through dual injectors timed to microseconds. The operator barely moves. A single joystick, Command PRO, manages 16 parameters, from throttle mapping to GPS autosteer. Every motion is tracked, stored, and transmitted to a cloud server 3 states away. In controlled conditions, it's flawless. But when weather shifts, dust, heat, vibration, the feedback loop narrows. During early stress tests, engineers recorded thermal spikes, piston rings melting past 120 degrees Celsius, hydraulic oil flashing above design pressure. In 2023, Deere released a software patch to widen safety margins. The patch worked, but the incident revealed the truth. The more perfect the control, the smaller the space for human error. In operation, the 9RX 830 covers more than 1,000 acres a day. The driver monitors a wall of data: torque, slip, fuel flow, cloud connectivity, one eye on the field, one on the system. A single disconnect in satellite link can shut down autonomous guidance. A half-second loss that turns $1 million field pattern into chaos. Deere calls it precision agriculture. The engineers call it risk per pixel. Ranked second, the Terminator pulling tractor. When 10,000 horsepower went rogue. Under the floodlights of Bowling Green, Ohio, the air trembled before the pull began. 4 supercharged Hemi 5.8 engines roared like thunder trapped in steel, unleashing over 10,000 horsepower. A force so extreme it didn't just move the earth. It defied the laws of physics. They called it the Terminator. A machine born not to farm, but to challenge everything engineers thought was possible. Built by a crew who believed limits were meant to be broken, each engine ran on pure methanol, all feeding a single drive shaft that could only survive a few seconds at full throttle. When the flag dropped, those seconds began, and the world turned into vibration, smoke, and fire. The sled grew heavier with every meter, the crowd thundered in excitement, and the machine screamed back in fury. But on one night in 2011, the balance between power and control finally snapped. The frame twisted under torque, one throttle jammed open, and the Terminator broke free from its master. In a flash of flame in the steel, the 10,000 horsepower monster burst off the track, tearing through the safety barrier in an explosion of dirt and fire. No one was killed, but that moment changed the sport forever. The National Tractor Pullers Association, NTPA, rewrote its entire safety rulebook that year, mandating emergency shutoff cables, reinforced chassis inspections, and strict power limits. From the wreckage of that night, the Terminator was not destroyed. It was reborn as a warning. Every puller since has known one truth. When you chase the edge of power, you must know precisely where it ends. In first place, Big Roy 8WD 1977 600 HP. In the center of the Manitoba Agricultural Museum stands a machine that dwarfs everything around it. Its body stretches nearly 9 meters long, painted bright yellow against the prairie wind. The name on its frame reads Big Roy 8-wheel drive, 600 horsepower. Built in 1977 by Versatile's engineers under R.J. Reimer, it was meant to be the next step in Canadian farming. An 8-wheel drive behemoth powered by a Cummins KTA 1150 V8 diesel. It weighed 23 tons and produced 600 horsepower, enough to pull implements twice the size of anything else in the field. But the first test revealed a flaw that no amount of torque could fix. The engine sat in front of the cab, rising almost 3 meters. The driver could not see the ground for 8 feet ahead. During early trials, operators described moments of blindness, the earth vanishing beneath the hood. On flat land, it was unstoppable. On uneven ground, it became dangerous. One misjudged crest, and the machine buried its front tires or struck obstacles invisible from the seat. Engineers added mirrors, cameras, even a periscope-style lens, but none restored sight to a design built around mass. After a few years, Big Roy retired. The fields it worked had changed, the farms had split, and the world no longer needed a tractor this large. For decades, it sat in storage, its yellow paint fading to ochre. When restorers brought it back to life in 2020, they found the engine flawless, the frame uncracked, the cab immaculate, as if waiting for a driver who would never return. From fields that fed nations to machines that nearly broke them, these tractors remind us that power is never free. It always demands control and sometimes consequence. Each design carried the ambition of its era, to go further, to work faster, to conquer the land. Some succeeded. Others became warnings carved in steel. You've just witnessed the 10 deadliest tractors ever built, a journey through brilliance, danger, and the pursuit of strength without limits. And as the dust settles, one truth remains. The line between innovation and obsession is thinner than a gear's edge. If you've enjoyed, leave a like and subscribe to Tractor World. Your support drives the next chapter of our journey into the unseen side of agricultural engineering. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next episode, where the machines only get louder, and the stories even deeper.